The debate about immigration enforcement continues. What's growing North Carolina? And America's talking with clips from capitals all across the states. It's right here with the Center Square Daily for February 4th, 2026. I'm your host, Greg Bishop. President Donald Trump yesterday signing the bills that gets the federal government funded, but it's also kicking off a 2-week debate about reforms possible to immigration and customs enforcement. The president yesterday signing the bill in the Oval Office, explaining what taxpayers are on the hook for.
It continues to fund deportation flights that are removing dangerous illegal aliens from our country. It continues historically successful efforts to reduce crime in our nation's capital. We have a very safe city right now. We have a city that is like a different world from what it was a year and a half ago.
Now, the president touting reduced crime statistics across the country, saying that it is his administration and federal law enforcement agencies bringing about decreased crime. Local officials saying it is local efforts decreasing crime in various jurisdictions, but the efforts also focused on immigration enforcement, with the Trump administration making sure that those operations continue. We'll hear from Tom Homan coming up, but still let's focus on taxpayer costs of this bill that the president signed yesterday, more than $1 trillion worth of costs. Republican U.S. Representative Thomas Massie voted against the measure, and he says that it has a ton of giveaways. $5 billion for refugee programs, $315 million for the CIA, $3.8 billion for Israel, $1.5 billion for Egypt, and $2.1 billion for the country of Jordan. You've got Massie laying those out and saying that it's much more than just those issues, but clearly a critic from within the Republican ranks about the bill that the House passed and the president signed. But again, all of this sparking the ongoing debate about immigration and customs enforcement following the shooting death of 2 citizens in Minnesota, where ICE was involved in operations to target illegal aliens in the country illegally with criminal records, and protesters interfering with those operations. And that sparked a lot of debate and a lot of public outcry. The Center Square's reporters were in Washington, D.C. yesterday, where there was a news conference with Democrats and other immigrant advocates. Ilhan Omar from Minnesota there, talking about how it's time for Kristi Noem to be impeached.
We say it is time for Kristi Noem to go. We mean it now. Let's go. When we say there needs to be accountability for the architect of the terror we are facing in Minneapolis and so many other cities, which is Stephen Miller, we mean we need accountability for him now. Let's go.
Others in Washington, D.C. include Congresswoman Robin Kelly from the state of Illinois. She's also running for the U.S. Senate. She recently filed articles of impeachment against Noem, listing various reasons why she believes that Noem should be impeached. But when asked on the streets of Washington, D.C. by our reporters for the Center Square, Congresswoman Kelly wasn't sure who should replace Kristi Noem if she was impeached.
Anybody, I would say, he wouldn't do, I'm sure, but I'm not sure, to be honest with you, because when I look at his cabinet secretaries, the lack of experience, the incompetence is unbelievable. So I don't know who he would pick, but we'll see. I know I have no say in it. So
obviously, any new chosen person for the Department of Homeland Security would go through the U.S. Senate for confirmation. But clearly there are still politics at play. Earlier this morning, Tom Homan talking about what's going on in Minnesota and the operations taking a shift. He says that they're drawing down some of the ICE officials and Customs and Border Patrol officials in Minnesota, but not entirely, he says.
I have announced effective immediately, we will draw down 700 people effective today. 700 law enforcement personnel. My goal with the support of President Trump is to achieve a complete drawdown and end this surge as soon as we can. But that is largely contingent upon the end of the illegal and threatening activities against ICE and its federal partners that we're seeing in the community.
And also talks about the importance of continued cooperation with local law enforcement in Minnesota to, say, for instance, have those who are here illegally that are charged with crimes in local jails to be handed over to federal immigration officials. And Homan saying that he's getting a lot of cooperation from sheriffs across Minnesota and still working with other law enforcement officials in various pockets of the state. But that was almost immediately rebuked by Chuck Schumer, the Senate Democrats' leader in the Senate this morning. Just moments after Homan made the announcement, Schumer criticized the move.
Let's be very clear. Homan's announcement is not close to enough. 700 officers is going to be like a drop in the bucket to the people of Minneapolis, as over 2,000 agents representing 70% of agents will still be on the streets, brutalizing citizens, abusing people. It's not close to enough. They all have to leave now. That's what the people of Minneapolis want.
With that ongoing debate, talk about the taxpayer costs in various states, costing billions of dollars to fund non-citizens in the country, either through helping them with housing, food, lawyer services, and even education services. The taxpayer costs is growing by the day, including with the bill that the president signed, giving billions to help asylum seekers in the country. So clearly there's a taxpayer cost, but there's also an economic cost to immigration. Earlier today, in a House committee, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent went head-to-head with California Congresswoman Maxine Waters about the impact of illegal immigration on housing prices.
General Labor's time has expired. 10 and 20 million immigrants.
Can you
look
shut
at the
him
housing stock of working Americans, and can you maintain some level of dignity?
General Labor's time has expired.
Housing, especially for working Americans, a Wooten study has shown that the mass unfettered immigration, adding 10 to 20 million new people demanding housing, Congresswoman, is what caused a great deal of housing inflation for working Americans. So you and the Biden administration should be ashamed.
Now, there are also indications that rent prices are starting to cool a bit, with advocates for the Trump administration saying it's because of his clamping down of the southern border and going after illegal immigration. But clearly, the cost of housing an important factor when it comes to people deciding on where they should move. And with that note, let's talk now with Alan Wooten. He is managing editor at the Center Square, where there's a lot of people moving to North Carolina. Alan, thanks for taking time with us. New census numbers released last week showing that indeed North Carolina is growing substantially.
Yeah, that's right, Greg. It's up 7.2% in the last 5 years. We're at a pace where we'll be just below 12 million by the 2030 census. It is, I can remember as a kid seeing a commercial on TV called Boomtown Furniture, and North Carolina is Boomtown right now.
The things that's causing that increased population, as we see, from 8 million in 2020 up to 11.2 million in the most recent census estimates. Is it the weather?
Well, the weather doesn't hurt. You can have the beaches or the mountains in North Carolina. I think the biggest thing is the climate that's been established. North Carolina is known for its strong job growth. The infrastructure investment is there. And there's policies now from the General Assembly that are very business friendly. You couple those together with the General Assembly's massive quest in the last 15 years to drop the income tax rate on individuals, and you get a good recipe for growth. And it's also it's from the things that bring people here because they want to shop, live, and play here, but it's also because businesses want to come here.
We're talking about South Carolina, other states that have growing populations, Florida, Texas, but you see a lot of states with stagnating population like Illinois, and other states losing population like California. What do you think it is that, what are economists providing that is showing why people are going from one state to the next?
Well, in North Carolina, back in 2010, when the General Assembly was won both chambers by Republicans for the first time since the Civil War, 140 years, the income tax rates were 6, 7, and 7.75%. They're 3.99% this year. The corporate income tax rate back then was 6.9%. Today, it is at 2.25%. Businesses want to come here. They're coming by the billions of dollars of investment. We just saw one yesterday with Siemens Energy announcing a $421 million investment in 3 locations in North Carolina. It is the place to be. It is the place to grow companies.
Now, Alan, it's not just the population getting top spot in 2025 with more than 7% growth. It's pretty remarkable. But North Carolina also being recognized for its business climate, as you just laid out, the income tax issue, the various businesses that are pumping investments into North Carolina. With that comes a lot of jobs. But in your most recent stories, you talk about the string of new businesses that are pouring investment into the state. If we could, let's take a look at just some of those and tell us what these businesses are doing. Some people are going to recognize some of these names, others not so much.
Well, it is a very impressive list when you talk about Amazon Web Services, Johnson & Johnson, Jet Zero coming to the airport in Greensboro. You talk about Vulcan Elements. That's a rare earth magnet factory that a lot of folks have never heard. They got started in the Research Triangle Park, based out of Massachusetts. That is a growing thing, as we've seen, where the president's administration, they're really looking at some of the things that are driving the rare earth magnets and energy parts of what makes America go now. So that's a really big one. But a lot of the life sciences sector is a big part of where North Carolina's growth is. The pharmaceutical industries, it was a top trade commodity last year, 19.6 billion in imports, 8.6 billion in exports. And that's only part of the year. That's through the numbers that are available. So the life sciences have been a big part of that. North Carolina does have the workforce. We've got more than 5 million working and less than 200,000 not working. The unemployment rate for the most recent is 3.4%, well below the national average.
Alan, we're talking about North Carolina. Alan Wooten with us for the Center Square Daily, and Amazon looking to invest $10 billion in North Carolina, 500 jobs. You got Jet Zero looking at 4.7 billion, 14,000 jobs. All of this obviously sounds great, right? I mean, they're going to be investing their private dollars and creating jobs, which is going to foster more growth in North Carolina. But those commitments from these private sector businesses, it comes with some strings attached for taxpayers. Tell us about how some of these commitments come with that taxpayer cost.
The majority of the commitments that we've talked about here today did have taxpayer incentives, subsidies. In North Carolina, the job development investment grants, those usually go for a 12-year period, but they are contingent on the company meeting job creation goals. And North Carolina doesn't pay out a nickel before those goals are met. It is very surprising to many that the rate of success for companies to get 100% of what is promised in those incentives is somewhere down around about 42%. So it is not that great, but yet that's the name of the game these days. You do have to play with incentives, and North Carolina does that very well. I was talking with one of our reporters who works on these things with us. He attends the Commerce Department meetings regularly. And we talked about the fact that probably as they budget, they can probably know, well, we can go ahead and promise this much because we know not everybody's going to get it. So we can throw a few million here, a few million there. I don't know that they do that per se in their budgeting process, but I say it's the equivalent of a company that plans for having people leave during the year, and you're going to have a month or two where the salary's not taken. So they can do the same thing.
Yeah, and in your story, it talks about the success rates of achieving all these incentives, right? I mean, you have to, number one, either sustain the jobs that you promised you were going to have, or bring in the investment that you promised you were going to have. But I mean, 50% or less than 50% of all of these incentives actually are followed through with entirely.
That's correct. And then you've also got usually there's if you've got a decent sized metro area, there's usually going to be some local incentives too. I have seen occasions where the local incentives actually were larger than what the state did. But those are the way those works. Now, keep in mind, not all always pan out. Apple was going to come to North Carolina a few years ago. They pulled out. One of the big job creation factories that we've been talking about in the last few years is related to the electric vehicle industry. And VinFast, which is a company out of Vietnam, they've been planning to do a factory that'll be in the middle of the state. They have yet to do production. They were supposed to start production last year. They're now talking about 2028. So there are a lot that do succeed. There are some that succeed on a level where they don't use all of the taxpayer dollars promised, but yet the company stays here and continues to operate. And then you've got some others that they never make it.
And that seems to be the case across the country. I know of cases in Illinois where an electric school bus maker was getting all these tax incentives, and then all of a sudden the company went bankrupt. Those tax incentives never went out because the company never made good on the promises. But clearly something that taxpayers need to be watching is these types of balancing acts that states are doing, right? Incentives to grow, but what kind of costs does that come with the taxpayers? Is North Carolina's government, are they, and I use this kind of just in general term, are they balanced? And I'm talking about the budget. I'm talking about the politics. What is it in North Carolina that seems to be so attractive?
That's a really good question. The balance, the budget does have to be balanced year to year. In 2016, when there was a Republican trifecta, they put in the state budget that year to have a law that says if the budget's not passed, then we will operate on the last year's spending plan, which is actually what we're doing now. I think we're the only state in the country that didn't have their budget done on July 1 when they were supposed to. We're at like day 215, I think, or something like that right now.
I've been there.
But, yeah, but the seat in the governor's office has been a Republican only 3 times since 1900. The General Assembly for all those years was Democrats. It's now Republican. So there's some back and forth there. The Republicans usually, North Carolina was the last state in the country to get veto power against its governor. So we now, that didn't come until the late 90s. And so the Republicans do have the ability to veto the governor if they have 3/5 majority. But there's a lot of back and forth with that. And then you've also got the point where in North Carolina, Republicans are on the federal level. Donald Trump won this state 3 years in a row. The last time North Carolina sent a Democrat to the U.S. Senate was in 2008. A midterm has not been won by a Democrat since 1998, John Edwards. So it's a state that is very, very much purple. It goes back and forth, but the policies that the General Assembly have put in place are what's driving the growth. That's what's creating the boomtown for us.
Well, Alan, I'm here in central Illinois where we just got done with, felt like a month's worth of 0-degree temperatures. Starting to warm up a little bit, but it's 25 degrees. What's the temperature over in North Carolina right now?
We had a major snow event. We had all 100 counties get snow for the first time since 2014 last weekend. Got 9.25 at my house. So
wow.
we don't get 9.25 for a year or maybe a decade. So, but we're digging out. We're doing fine. We're actually supposed to get a trace tonight, but next week, 60 degrees.
Look at that. Again, North Carolina growing. I believe it's because Alan Wooten's there. So greatly appreciate you taking the time with us. And we'll talk again in the near future.
Thanks, Greg.
This is the Center Square Daily, and now it's time for America's Talking with clips from across the country in state houses up and down America, where we now focus in on Washington State. A couple of different interesting clips where in a Washington State House committee, you had Jim Walsh, a Republican, question why there's a proposal to change the word alien to non-citizen.
It has a long tradition. Before alien was known more popularly as an extraterrestrial reference, tracing back, of course, to the Alien and Sedition Acts from the early days of our country. So The recommended replacement in this modernization exercise of non-citizen for alien is no more specific. A non-citizen does not speak specifically to a person's immigration status. It can mean many things in many contexts. So while we understand some of the negative response to the word alien, it is a good word. It is a judgment-free word, and it is the word that the federal government and federal law uses extensively.
So you've got Washington looking to change some state statutes to get rid of the word alien and put in non-citizen, and that debate obviously continuing there on the West Coast, but also in Washington, legislators hearing about a measure that would allow for local health departments to fine immigration and customs enforcement facilities where they house detainees.
The bill allows the Department of Health to issue a fine to any private detention facility that prevents entry to inspect the facility. It creates the Federal Enforcement Accountability and Community Repair Account, where all fines are collected from the inspection violations and are used to assist individuals or family members of individuals that have been wrongfully detained and released by the court, assaulted, or killed by U.S. ICE agents. It allows for individuals or families with members that have been wrongfully detained and released by the court, assaulted, or killed at a private detention facility or during the process of being taken to a private detention facility to receive assistance from the account, and it amends the title.
So with the efforts in Washington state, it looks like they're working to have more what some would call accountability of immigration and customs enforcement. Others may see that as trying to stifle immigration and customs enforcement with local actions against federal agencies. But down in Georgia, they seem to be taking a different approach, a more cooperative approach, with their state house taking up a measure that deals with allowing local police to do DNA swabs on illegal aliens that are in their jails.
If ICE does not pick up the illegal within 48 hours, then our locals, wherever they're charged or arrested, will then take the DNA. This just really prevents a duplication of the process here. So if ICE has already taken the DNA, there's really no sense in us doing it. But if ICE can, for some reason, cannot pick them up within 48 hours before they are released, then DNA will be taken. This bill truly just makes sure that if there's any unsolved crimes that may be able to be solved by DNA, that we catch those. And if they are deported out of the country and come back and commit a crime, that we can make sure we know who commits the crime.
Interesting to see the comparison and contrast between those two states and legislation they're crafting impacting immigration enforcement. Now, this next clip doesn't deal with immigration enforcement, but it does deal with law enforcement. In Michigan, there's legislation that they're looking at to deal with the liability question for police officers that work to take down drones.
From our downtown festivals to our high school football games to major events across the state. This bill also provides common sense civil liability protection for officers acting under this authority. If an officer has to take action to stop a dangerous drone, they should not be personally liable to the operator for the damage to the aircraft. This is not shielding misconduct, it's protecting officers who act reasonably in an emergency situation to prevent harm. Michigan has been a leader in innovation and safety, and this bill continues that tradition, embracing technology while protecting the people who make our communities safe and strong.
And that is America's Talking, quick clips from state houses across the country. From my studio in Central Illinois, I'm Greg Bishop, and be sure to join us here tomorrow for more stories impacting you, the taxpayer, only from the Center Square Daily.